Hello, welcome guys. Well, to be able to enter your BIOS setup when your laptop is off or your computer is off, immediately you press the power key, you press F10. Let's try it and see. So I've pressed the power key. Immediately I press F10. There will be an indication that F10 has been pressed. Okay, so this is our basic input-output system. You realize that when you get to this page, there are 6 categories. We have the main, we have the security. That's the main. We have the security. We have diagnostics. We have system configuration, and we have exit. So we are going to take each of them one after the other, and then we'll digest them further. Let's get back to the main. The main, on the first item, we have system time. It tells you about the time. System date also tells you about the date and the model of the laptop or computer you'll be using. It also has your product number. It has your system board identification. It has your system board identification and then warranty start date. It also has the type of processor you'll be using or you're using or your machine possesses. You also have the processor speed, total memory, the BIOS version, that is the basic input-output system version, and the vendor of the BIOS. You also have your serial number, and then you also have your unique identifier. You have the universally unique identifier. You also have the product configuration ID. You have the system board CT number, and the CT is a commodity tracking ID. And then we have the factory installed operating system. This tells you the operating system on which the computer was built. It also has the primary battery serial number. We can go further to look at the wireless local area network and the FCC ID, which is the Federal Communication Commission. And then we have the Bluetooth FCC ID and then diagnostic log. The diagnostic logs tells you about the errors that has occurred, with respect to your laptop or computer and the date. For example, you see the 0601 refers to booting device not found. Okay, so booting device not found error, that is 0601. And then there is the date, which is 16th October 2018. Okay, all right. So, and you realize below the main presentation, you realize that there is F1, and there is escape. F1 for help, escape for exit, and then there is an up and down arrow key, which selects items upwards or downwards. We also have the forward and back, which is a select menu. We also have F5 and F6, which changes value. F5 changes the value downwards. That is, it brings the value down in terms of position. And then F6 brings it up. And then we have enter, which would select. We have F9 to enter default setup. And then we have F10, which would save and exit. All right, so let's go back to our main table. So we've exhausted the main. Now let's move on to security. You realize that security, we have administrator password and power on password. Administrator password secures your BIOS setup. That is, putting on your computer. If anybody would want to enter your basic input-output system setup, then that person would have to have the password you put in your administrator password column. For example, let's try it and see. So I have selected administrator password. I press enter. You realize there's a pop-up menu that tells you to enter new password and confirm new password. So let's do it and see. So let's see, I enter a password and I press enter for the next one and I confirm it. Make sure the password you enter, you do not forget, otherwise you go through hell. So I have made changes to that. Okay, we'll come back to it. Now I'm continuing. There is also power on password. This power on secures your laptop, and before the computer will boot to the Windows section, it will request a password if you have set a password for this column. When you move to power on password, you press enter. It will request for a password and a confirmation. Let's also enter a password, enter, and confirmation, enter. So I have done that. All right. We will later confirm what it actually does. So we are done with security. Now let's move on to diagnostics. Diagnostics virtually tests your machine. It tests the capacity or the health of your hard disk. And then there is also a memory test, which also tests the strength of your memory and to find out if it's actually functioning well. So if you want to find out if your hard disk is healthy or your memory is healthy, you can do a diagnostic check here. Let's move on now to system configuration. You realize that the first item talks of language. So here I can change the language of the system. It won't actually affect the Windows itself, but the basic input language of the computer will change. Okay, so I can make changes here. If I want to select Français, I move the cursor to the French, Français, and I press enter. You realize the languages have changed. Okay, but I would still want to maintain my English. My French is quite poor. All right, now let's move on to virtualization technology. Virtualization technology, we would go into detail, but then it really talks of making something exist as though it's physical. For example, on this laptop, I can create a virtual section of it that will make it look like I'm using another laptop aside my physical laptop. I know it's confusing, don't worry, we'll digest it in the detail when we get there. And then we have LAN power savings, that's a local area network power savings, that's the power saving option. We also have fan always on. You can decide to put your fan off, you can decide to put your fan off on. And then we have action keys. And then we also have our boot options. Let's press enter to select our boot options, and then we can digest it further. These are pushed. If you want to boot your computer, usually all we know is my computer is on, is functioning. The computer can actually boot from a floppy disk, which we no more use, so it's out of the system. So it will boot from it can boot from a CD-ROM, it can boot from a network or an external drive. Okay, all right. So if, for instance, with this, you realize that there is CD-ROM, there is floppy boot, there is internal network boot. All right. If there were to be an external hard drive or a pen drive attached to this machine, it would have indicated here. Sometimes you would want to do an installation from a pen drive using the pen drive as a ROM. You can do that. It will show here, and then you proceed from there. All right. So with this, usually when a laptop or a computer is booting, it boots from your settings, what you have set. So if you've set the value for the hard disk, it is first going to boot from the hard disk. If it doesn't find an operating system there, it will move on to the second thing on the list. Let's say let's use this for example. CD-ROM boot is selected. I mean, it's the first in terms of value. Now it means that when this particular laptop is booting, it will start looking for the operating system from the CD-ROM. If it doesn't find it, it will then move to the floppy boot or the floppy disk. If it doesn't find it, it will move to internal network. If it doesn't find it, so it will continue like that until it finds an operating system. If it doesn't find an operating system in any of them, then you find an error. All right. Okay. So usually what we know is my laptop is on, it boots from my hard drive and I'm through. But it can virtually boot from various sections of the boot value. All right. So we have the CD-ROM boot, we have the floppy boot, we have internal network adapter boot. Now we have boot order. We've selected boot order. Let's press enter to find out what actually exists there. So just like as I was saying, this is what it talks about. So with this, our boot order, I have my hard drive selected first. Okay, followed by the CD-ROM, USB diskette, USB CD or DVD-ROM, or USB floppy, or a network adapter. So when my computer is boot, it will start looking for operating systems based on how I have arranged the values. And you can actually change them. You can use F5 key to bring the value down or F6 key to bring the value up. Now let's see. I'm pressing F5. You realize that the notebook hard drive is now on the second item. It means that now when the computer is put on or boot, it will first search for the operating system from the internal CD DVD ROM before it gets to my hard drive. But I wouldn't want it to be like that. I would want my laptop to be as fast as it can. So I would want my hard drive to be the first to be searched. So as I use the F5 key to bring the value down to the second position, if I want to return it, I press the F6 key. I press the F6 key and then it moves back to hard drive. All right. Okay. So now let's press escape to go back, and then another escape. We want to go back again. So this is basically what it is. And then we have our exit section. You have exit saving changes, exit discarding changes, and then you want to load your default setup. If you've made changes and you want to go back to settings of the machine itself as and when it came, you can go there. This time we would want to exit saving the changes we've made, because I want us to look at how the administrator password and that's how it works. Okay, so we are exiting saving changes and say yes. So this is our power on password. Let's make the entry. So I enter the password, and then I now have access to my window. So you see, you now have to enter the passwords you set for your Windows. So this password is entirely different from the previous one you saw. Okay. All right. Now we would want to know the difference, the actual difference between the administrator password and the power on password. So we are going to deactivate one and then later activate and deactivate the other to be able to tell. Okay. All right. Okay. So we are back to our BIOS setup. Let's move on to security. Administrator password. Before you have access to whether you want to enter a new or confirmed password, you have to enter the current one. So let me do that quickly. So it gives me access to the new password I want to enter, but of course I want to clear it so that we know what the difference between the administrator password and the power on password. So leaving it empty, I press enter, and then confirming it, I would also press enter. So password has been changed, you see, so I save it. Then you see beside the administrator password clear, then it means there's no password set to it. Okay, so now let's put our laptop or computer off. Let's put our computer off, put it back on again, or put it the right word, and then find out what happens. Okay, so let's exit saving changes. All right, it's already on. Now, because the administrator password only protects your BIOS setup, when you try to boot your computer, it will not ask for a password before you get to your Windows. Okay, it will give you access unless you're trying to enter the BIOS setup mode. Then you would have to enter a password. So let me shut the laptop down and then have a feel for ourselves. So we're shutting down. Okay, so it's off. Now let's put it on. Let's put it back on. Without pressing anything, you realize it will give us access to the Windows. You see, Windows starting. You remember that when we set the password for the power on password, it prompted us to enter a password before we were given access to the Windows. But now I have deactivated that, and then I have activated the administrator password. So I just want us to know the difference. So with administrator password, you can have access to your Windows and do whatever you want to do, all right. It will only prompt for a password when you are trying to enter the BIOS setup. Okay, so we would want to try that as well and see. Let me shut it down again. So this time when I'm powering it on or when I'm booting it, I would press the F10 key so that I would enter the BIOS setup, and then we'll see what happens. Okay, so it's off now. I'm putting it back on. That's booting it. And then I'll press my F10 key. F10 key is pressed, as you can see down there. You see? Enter administrator password. Because I'm trying to enter the basic input-output system setup, it is requesting for a password before it gives access to it. So let me enter the password so we see. Now we are there. So if you want to protect or secure your BIOS setup, you can, go to security and then set a password for your administrator password, and you are good to go. If you want to protect your laptop such that one would have to enter a password before he or she gets access to Windows, and then enter another password for the Windows, well, here you are. You have, and then as I already said, we have our exit. You save changes and then you exit and stuff like that. Thank you so much for joining my class. As you already know, we provide you with more videos as we go on. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.